All right, what's up, everybody? So let's get started. The first thing I want to talk about is the checkpoint. I just had a question in chat, so I wanted to make sure this made the YouTube video. Worried about getting a security vulnerability on the project and getting a 0 on the whole thing. There's also, I'll add to that, not doing your reports properly and getting a 0 on the whole project. That's been in the syllabus for forever. Open source reports. Make sure you're reading this and getting these reports done. The consequences are on a case-by-case basis, ranging up to a 0 for the entire project. I've thought about this. I decided how I'm going to grade these is for each of the five objectives. The objectives are equally weighted. For each of these 5, I'm going to grade your code and your reports as one thing. So if you have perfectly working code for a particular objective, but you're missing the reports, that's going to be a 0 for that objective. But if you have reports for like all the libraries that you use to see who's currently logged in, then you can get all the credit for that objective with the code and reports. But if you're missing the reports for the libraries you used for a particular objective, or if you're missing one of the reports that you've used for a particular objective, and go to a 0 on that objective. But I'll do it on an objective by objective basis. And of course, if you have no reports at all or your reports are just garbage, that's a 0 on the whole project because you'll get 0s on all five of the objectives. So that's scary. The security issue is scary. If you have a security vulnerability, I'm reserving the right to go all the way to a 0 on the project and the entire project for your entire team. So the way to mitigate that and what that's designed into the class is the checkpoints. What I recommend is by this checkpoint, which is, Friday? Oh my goodness, that snuck up. Which is in 2 days, isn't it? Do I push that back? Do I change this? It's going to interfere with homework 5, and this is too late. So let me finish my sentence, and then I'll think about. I'll finish that train of thought. Is finish? Yeah, it's right there. Here's today's lecture. Holy shit. There's that snuck up fast. I'm sure you're feeling that too. If I got caught off guard by it, I'm sure all of you have. Or I guess I'm not sure, but maybe you're watching it closer than I am. The exact dates. That means we're 3 weeks out from there's only 3 weeks after this? That's fantastic. The semester's almost over. So, finish that stuff before the checkpoint. Like, for this checkpoint, you better all have all of the reports that you think you need, and ideally having the project finished up. Ideally, there are at least a handful of teams that are finishing up the project over these next few days, and for this checkpoint are submitting a completed project that ideally I can grade and just say, you got 100 on this project, you're done. You don't have to worry about the actual deadline. Hopefully there's a good number of students, a good number of teams in that position where you're just done. That's the intent of the checkpoints. The checkpoints, ideally, in my mind, were you work on the project, you do what you can, and then you get feedback on them. Especially on the things that you're worried about, like reports. Y'all should be more worried about reports. But for checkpoint 1, which is what these ended up being, they ended up just being checkpoint 1 and checkpoint 2 dates. I intended for you to use them earlier and not have this on the day of homework 3. But that didn't work either. That's something I'll change for next semester since I know how these checkpoints are going to be used. But anyway, I intended for you to have those things. Anything you're unsure about, man, what are these reports? What's Jesse asking for? You get 2 rounds of feedback on them. Most teams wasted this round of feedback on the report aspect. Most teams didn't have any reports at all. So that's a whole round of feedback that you missed. This, for most of you, this will be the first time that you're getting feedback on your reports. And if my feedback is, man, these reports are garbage, this is actually what I'm looking for, not what you gave me, then you only have one more chance to submit those things and get reports the way I want. For any teams who don't have reports at this checkpoint, oh my, may God have mercy on your soul, because you have one chance to submit good reports, to write all those reports with no feedback. I guess you can come to office hours and talk to me there, or try to ask questions in chat. And we will go over examples during these last few weeks of reports, of going through documentation, of finding source code. But man, if this is the first time you're actually getting feedback, I gotta admit, I am getting a little nervous. I'm getting a little worried for a lot of teams out there based on the checkpoint one, the checkpoint one stuff. But anyway, that's your answer. You're worried about security vulnerabilities. Do anything that has to do with security right here. Like, make sure you're handling user input. Make sure you have authentication. Do those things before this checkpoint, and then you can get feedback. And if you have a vulnerability and you don't get feedback on it here, and then you get to here, and I'm trying to say, you got a security vulnerability, that's an F or whatever. I shouldn't say or whatever on such a strong statement there. I'm a reasonable person. You come back with, dude, we had that same vulnerability here, and you didn't give us feedback on it. At the time designed for you to give us feedback on that, I'll probably be like, you know what, since I missed it in the checkpoint, I can't punish you for that, and then give you credit. The credit for the project without that security vulnerability. So take advantage of those checkpoints. Like, I'll adhere to that. Like, if I tell you something here, if I say, oh, you have these 3 objectives done, I'm gonna stick to that, even if I made a mistake. If I give you bad feedback, like, I'll stick to that and give you the best possible outcome based on the information I gave. At least Monday would be appreciated. And there's not, let's see. Yeah, so I'll just change the checkpoints. Where do I talk about checkpoints? Is it only in the doc? Checkpoint cannot be used within 3 weeks of another checkpoint or the project due date. It has to be adjusted. Okay, gateway, that's what we want to see. 2.5. I didn't update this one, but you get the idea. And we'll say Wednesday. What did I even do there? Friday, April 20th? We'll say Wednesday on this. So make sure, the only way I'm hesitant with this is that it's getting close to homework 5, and actually it's giving me less time to generate the feedback for the final submission, but we'll manage. I'll prioritize the feedback a lot more. I have a better strategy too. I'm going to utilize the TAs more for the next one. April 20th. Why am I so dumb sometimes? Wednesday, April 21st. I'm a king. That's a weird thing. All I have to do is move a deadline. Everybody's so thrilled, which I completely understand. I don't know why I said it like that. How are we expected to secure an unauthorized WebSocket connection? Authorize it? Like, if we have the WebSocket connection set up after the login screen, but before the user logs in, they can execute the WebSocket connection and start receiving messages. I guess it doesn't matter since anyone can make an account, but do you have any thoughts? So if you're allowing unauthenticated WebSocket connections, don't accept frames on that WebSocket connection. Like, don't let that user won't be logged in. They won't have a username associated with them. Like, what does it even mean when they send content? If they can read content without being logged in, that's fine. That's a feature a lot of sites have. If that's how your site is supposed to work, then by all means have your site work like that. But once they log in, if you have a single page app and you're logging in through Ajax and that unauthenticated connection, that unauthenticated WebSocket connection is still open, sever that connection and then send a new request for an authenticated WebSocket connection. All right, does that make sense? Does that answer your question? Oh, by the way, today's content, I just have a few demos, and I don't even have anything planned for Friday. Just like I was saying earlier, it just doesn't take me that long to. Didn't take me as long as I anticipated to finish authentication. I gave you everything you need for the homework in 3 lectures. So So we have some time to do demos. I have 2 demos I want to show today, and then nothing tomorrow. So if chat, if you have questions, like now's the time. Today and Friday's lecture might be entirely just playing off of chat, asking questions. If you have questions about the project or whatever, homework 5, of course, because that's what we're supposed to be talking about these 2 weeks. But I don't think I've had really any questions about homework 5. But if we want to start talking about the project, by all means, we can make that shift. That shift is going to happen here at least. We're going to really focus on the project stuff and just a few random topics that didn't fit into the homework structure. We can start that early. Is AJAX the main established way to initiate a WebSocket connection? It's not quite AJAX for the WebSocket connection. It's an HTTP request. I guess, I don't know. I guess you could consider that AJAX if I'm really thinking about it. It doesn't cause a page load. It doesn't cause the page to reload, so I guess it is. I guess it could be considered AJAX. I never really thought about that as an AJAX request, but I guess does it technically fall under that category? It's made through JavaScript and it's asynchronous, so AJAX. Why not? What do we call like an image download? Like if you have an image tag and that triggers another HTTP request, is that asynchronous HTTP? I don't know. The labels, the acronyms get messy at times. Can we establish the WebSocket connection after they log in? Yeah. Yeah, and this is another thing that kind of made me sad about the checkpoint 1 is most of the apps, most of the projects weren't to the point where I could see what you were even building yet. But you have a lot of flexibility in your design. Like the project is designed, I guess, designed for you to be able to design your project. That's a weird sentence. But the structure of the project is made to be vague enough. Like you have to meet these 5 criteria. They're all super vague. And the intent there, and then I have more, just for grading purposes, I give you more detail in the project document, just so you know exactly what I mean, just a little more detail. So we have something to go off of. I'll go off of these in grading. If you go off of these in your design and you meet these requirement, I'm not going to say no to your grade. And you could argue that if you get a worse grade than you expected, and you're like, well, technically I did all these things, then, I'm reasonable, I'll give you the points. Just so we know. But these are still pretty vague, even with the extra content. That's intentionally so you can design whatever app you want. You can make whatever app you want. You want a game, you want, jeez. You want to make a game, make a game. You want to make a social media site, make a social media site. A social media app. You want to make, I can't even think of a third thing. You want to make a Google Docs clone? I'll just look around the room and say things. You want to make a Google Docs clone? Make a Google Docs clone. You'd have to have multimedia in there somewhere. So maybe these icons up here, you can upload and create. You can upload and have different icons. Make Google Docs. Like what the actual app is, including, to get more back to the question in chat, is it's whatever you want it to be, whatever feature you want. Like you don't have to ask me, how should we implement this? What should the user experience be? All of those questions are up to you. As long as you meet these criteria, I'm fine. Like, so I think the question in chat was more, if I can reword it to be more general, live interactions between users via WebSockets. Does this always have to exist? Or can it only exist for logged in users? And that's fine if it only exists for logged in users. As long as this feature exists somewhere in your app. Hell, maybe it only exists for admins to communicate with each other. It's fine. It still exists. The feature's there. It's fine. But you have to build the feature. Because I'm more concerned with, can you code with WebSockets and dig into the libraries and see how that works and how it's related to what we talked about in lecture and what you did on the homework. That's what I'm concerned about. I don't care what actual feature you build. And I want to leave that up to you. I want that to be up to you. So I'm not restricting you. Like you should be able to build any app that comes to mind as long as it's reasonably complex. Like if your app is Hello World or a chat app, it's not going to fit these criteria because there's just not enough meat there. Though you could make it, you could add features until it does meet these criteria. But anything you can think of, your team sits down and says, man, I'd really like to build X. I'd really like to build something. You should be able to build that, and these criteria shouldn't prevent you from implementing your favorite idea. You want to build a Twitch clone? Go for it. That's ambitious, but sure, go for it. Actually, it's not crazy ambitious, just because you can use libraries to do all the video stuff. And no, that's still ambitious. Be exciting though. A YouTube clone would be a lot easier. You could definitely make a YouTube clone. Handling videos like that, obviously not the way YouTube does it. The way YouTube does it is ridiculously complex. But to just get those features, like video uploads are as simple as image uploads. It's as simple as image sharing. You could definitely build a YouTube clone. It won't be as performant. It won't be as feature rich and everything as YouTube, of course. And you're not going to have data centers spread all throughout the world and billions of dollars behind it and crazy hardware. You're not going to have any of that. But you can have the same feature set. Sorry, not the same feature set, but the basic feature set. People can upload videos, comment on videos, send each other DMs. Like, you can have that. You can build that. That's as easy as the image sharing site. You just use a movie. Ooh, I'm blanking on it. You just use a video tag instead of an image tag. Like, that's about it. And a video, just like an image, is just bytes. And a little bit different syntax here, but not that much. Like, you could build YouTube. CSE tube, or whatever you want to call it. So the short answer to your question, Max, is yes. Yeah, you can absolutely do that. You don't have to have the unauthenticated WebSockets at all. And depending on what library you're using, maybe your library just authenticates the WebSockets for you. That's cool. If it doesn't, sometimes you do have to dig into the library a little bit and the functionality of it. You obviously have to do that for the report, but you might be able to do that to read the headers. Sometimes you won't be able to get the headers easily from a WebSocket. I've had this issue before. I'm using a WebSocket library. The WebSocket just handles all the WebSocket stuff for me. Done. But I wasn't using authentication the way that library wanted me to use it. I had my separate authentication stuff. So I had to dig into that library to be able to read the raw HTTP headers for that for the WebSocket connection from that initial handshake. I had to dig into the library to find that initial request for the upgrade, read the cookies from that request, and then get my authentication token out of those cookies so I could validate that user. And then once I did, I associated that WebSocket with that user, and then everything was fine after that. Yeah, Memotronics, that would work. Call it Tubloff. I like it. All right. So let's do these demos that I want to show today. This one isn't really a demo. I was contemplating just before lecture the best way to do this. I decided I'm not even cloning this repo. I'm just going to do it right in GitHub. So this is actually a public repo. If you want to check out this code, I'll even dump the link in chat. If you're on YouTube, you might have to actually type this in. But if you go to my repos, education, it's right there. It's public. So you can check this out. And then go to roots, auth. And I want to talk about the auth. I want to give an example of auth in action. I'm just going to say I won't go through everything here, but you know what? I might. We got time, and it's interesting. It's on topic. It's related. So let me go through at least the key parts, the parts that you'll have to do in your project. This will be a JavaScript example For the WebSockets, I was pretty heavy on the Python, so I'm going to switch to a little bit of JavaScript today. So this is Node. This is a Node app that includes authentication, and I did my kind of homebrewed authentication. In the real world, this isn't always the way you want to do it. I'm confident enough that I'm going to do it this way. But if you want to use a library and then write a report for that library, like for your project, then out there in the real world, by all means. So the important things here: my database connection. You're all used to this because you're done with homework 4 by now. My database connection. I'm not using Docker, so I do have localhost here. And then the Bcrypt library, the important thing. Bcrypt. So in my project, my package.json, I'm grabbing Bcrypt. So I'm grabbing that library. If there were a Docker file, I would make sure that's part of my Docker file is to run npm install. And then once I have Bcrypt, I have 2 cases here. I'll find it. Just bear with me. Reset password, forgot password, register. So when a user registers, I'm going to grab their email address that they gave me. Their username is going to be just their UBIT. In this case, this is an app only used by UB students. I'm hard coding it. You have to be a UB student or faculty, I suppose. Check to make sure that you don't have an account already. And if you do have an account, or if you don't have an account, we're going to register that account. I'm going to register. Oh, I forgot I was doing it like this. That's why I don't want to be in this thing. And then I'm going to add the user. When I add user, I'm actually adding you with a random password. You just create your account, and then that's it. You just type in your UBIT in this app, and then you have an account now. You'll get an email at that point asking you to set your password. Your initial password is a very long random password that nobody's ever going to know. And then you get a password reset link. When you reset your password, that's the part I want to talk about. When you reset your password, that's where we're going to... Oh my goodness, my eyes are not seeing it. It's somewhere in here. Change password. Secure password. That's changing the database, updating your hash in the database. Secure password is what we want. So secure password, look how simple it gets. Bcrypt does all the heavy lifting for us. Is this for the project or homework 5? Homework 5 for sure. Possibly the project if you're using Bcrypt. You might be using a different library depending on what strategy you take for the project. For the project, you'll at least have to... If you use a library, you're at least going to have to write a report and find something to this effect in the source code where you're getting the salting and the hashing. Homework 5, we need reset password? No. Come on, man. Read the doc. It's not in the doc. You don't have to do it. I'm just using this as an example. What I really want to show is what's highlighted here is actually using this Bcrypt library. Bcrypt is the part that you have to do, like these couple of lines here. Bcrypt, in whatever language you're using, is going to have a method to generate a random salt. I use a separate cookie for session token. Yeah. For objective 1, I have a cookie that counts visits after implementing objective 4. Should this cookie reset to 0 when a user logs in? That's up to you. As long as the first page load is... Yeah, that's up to you. Either way, you're going to get the credit. Because we're going to test objective 1 without logging in. And we're testing objective 4 with logging in. But when we're checking objective 4 and logging in, we're not checking for your first visit message anymore. We're going to be checking for the welcome username message. So that's fine if you do it that way. And you should use separate cookies for those. But it's fine if the first cookie doesn't reset, or if it does reset, that's fine too. It's up to you. Whatever you think makes sense, makes the most sense for functionality. When you first log in, do you want to re-welcome that user? Like, hey, it's your first time being here as an authenticated user. maybe you want to do that. Anyway, generating the salt, the library is going to have a method, generate the salt. There's my salt. That's going to be a random salt with the default settings. I didn't give it any parameters. And then hashing. Hash the password. Here's the password that I want to hash. Here's the salt that I just generated. And the important thing here, the big thing that I have to point out, this hash is the only thing I'm returning. I'm not returning this salt. At first glance, this looks like it contradicts the slides that I showed, because you have to store the hash of the password and the salt, both in the database. The Bcrypt library, this hash that hash returns, contains the salt. This hash actually is both the hash and the salt. So I return that and then store that in my database, wherever I called this. So once I secure the password, I have this hash. I'm going to add that to my database. Username has this hash, and this contains the salt as well. The Objective-1 cookie requires logging in. Should I change this? Yeah. The Objective-1 cookie shouldn't require logging in. And you can go through the testing procedure. The testing procedure doesn't say, for Objective-1, doesn't say log in anywhere in it. And we'll adhere to the testing procedures. So now when a user wants to log in, what do we do? And yeah, I'm definitely not going through all this code. Most of this code you don't have to do for your project. Most of these are user-friendly features. Password resets, email verification. You don't have to do any of that for your homework. They're nice features that you should have in real-world apps, but we don't need them. Authenticate, local strategy. Oh man, this is such a big file. Forgot password reset, log out, change password. I looked through this like just before lecture, and I already, like, looking at it during lecture is so much different. I feel so much more lost. So much more tunnel vision. Verify. Forgot password. Register. Post login. So it is in here. Success redirect. Local strategy. Maybe it's above here. Maybe, where do I set my strategy? Local strategy. There it is. So my authentication, this is Passport library. It uses the strategies and this terminology. So my strategy for authenticating a user is going to be to use Bcrypt, and there's going to be a method to be able to compare two hash, compare the, I just want to make sure I get the right order here. Compare the hash and salt. This I pulled from the database. I went to my database, pulled the information for this username, and got the stored password, which is the hash and salt for this user, and compared it to the password that the user is currently providing me. Bcrypt's compare method is going to interpret this value, get the salt, append the salt, hash this, and then check if the hashes match. Bcrypt's going to handle all that in the background. And I'm recommending Bcrypt for the homework. It does, like in the 3 lines of Bcrypt that I showed you, it's going to handle all the authentication stuff that you need. All the secure handling of passwords, all that stuff is handled in this library. We're not going to do our own hashing. We're not going to do our own salt generation. We're not going to even append our own salts. We're just going to use Bcrypt to do everything for you. No matter what language you have, and I realized I didn't do this before lecture, so I'm going to hold my breath on this one. Bcrypt, no matter what language you have, it should be that simple. Bcrypt in C#, Bcrypt in .NET at least. Hash password. That doesn't do a salt though. defined as salt. Oh, that's even easier than what I showed you. So it just generates its own salt. Bcrypt isn't even going to let you hash without salting, which is good. Why would it? Nice. So you can change the default settings, but by default, it's just going to do salt for you. And then, so hash, password, and verify. That's it. Done. 2 lines, even less lines than I had before. And this is .NET, so I would assume this is going to work in C#. Go. Oh, I hate that they named this Go. Is it Golang, right? Compare hash and password. Generate from password. 2 lines. Super easy. Java. Bcrypt, language of choice. That's what you're looking at. Bcrypt, hash password. Bcrypt, gen salt. Bcrypt, check password. Simple. Bcrypt is implemented in so many languages. Pull in this library, link it to your project, and use this library. It's going to do everything you need in a couple of lines. Of course, you have to build around that and build your actual app and handling the HTTP requests and that stuff. When it comes to actual authentication, this is why I can get this homework done in 3 lectures. Bcrypt is going to do so much for you, so much of what we've done. You're still going to have to generate tokens and do that stuff, but for objective 2.3, that I made a double objective, it's Bcrypt doing the heavy lifting. One thing I forgot to mention while we're in the JavaScript, if you are using Node, the Bcrypt library is going to be asynchronous. So you notice each time I used Bcrypt, why didn't I do this before? Let me just search for Bcrypt. I'm using the synchronous versions of each method. If I just do bcrypt.gensalt, I got to do promises or callbacks or something. I'm using the synchronous versions of these, so the program's going to just wait for me here instead of calling this asynchronously. Why can I never find this? And then I'll skip Python because I think I've hit you with enough Python, but you get the idea. I thought I had a shortcut for this, but I don't. So let me get on to the next demo. Hartloff at fury.cc.buffalo. Buffalo. We got this, I swear. That's just force of habit. I always hit ls. I can't even stop myself from doing that. I'll always hit ls when I enter a new directory. I actually don't want ls though. I want to go into my database. I want to use. So let's go into the production version of this app. I believe it's called users. Did I even show this during lecture? So I'm inside my Mongo database and I want to take a look at some live data. I want to do db. I'm going to be very careful here to not leak anybody's information. db.theuserscollection.find. And then my query is going to be username. Oh my goodness. Good thing I had most of the query there. Enough that it didn't show data. Hartloff. dot pretty. So this is my record on this site. And what I want to show is my password. When you use Bcrypt and you're hashing and salting your password's going to look like this. So you're welcome to try to crack this password if you have some spare time and you want to try to hack me. You can take this hash and run your brute force attacks and your dictionary attacks and try to get me. That's why I don't want to leak anybody else's stuff. If anybody has a weak password on here, I'd be actually leaking their information and leaking their hashes. So I'm going to be careful to only leak mine. If you want to attack me, go for it. You got to find out what app this is. You got to find out a lot of other information too. Go for it. But this is going to be a Bcrypt hashed salted password, and each hash is going to start with some meta information, which is going to say, I don't know the exact format here, so I'm just going to make it up, but it's going to say something like how long the salt is, how much of this is salt and how much of this is hash, so you know how to split this between salt and hash. Extract the salt. I'm going to make it up. I'm going to say the salt is the first 10 characters. I don't know how to read this. I never looked up the format. Going to take the first 10 characters, and then that's the salt for this hash. And then take the hash and then compare. Append the salt to the end of the password that's being provided. Hash it, and then see if it matches the hash there. And then I believe there's information to say which hashing algorithm. Bcrypt can do all kinds of different hashing algorithms. We're just taking the default hashing algorithm, and this is going to have that information encoded. This is effectively the headers. It's going to say which hash function, where's the salt, what am I looking at? And then the library knows how to read that, parse through all the bytes here, and get the information that we want. I think that's all we want to be in this database for. See you later, Fury. And one last demo. This is one that I wanted to show yesterday. It kind of broke yesterday a little bit. But we did get it working after lectures, just some silly stuff. They changed around libraries. I don't know. Java seems to remove libraries from the standard library and every once in a while, specifically just to piss me off. Like they're sitting around saying, you know what? Jesse's having too easy of a time. We got to mess with them. We're going to remove base 64 encoding from the standard library. Thanks. Which is what they did. And as far as I can tell anyway. There's a question that we have. We talked about this briefly last time. But the question is, isn't the salt going to add entropy? Hopefully none of you have that question too strongly. But I want to give a demo just to show that. So let's say I have some hash. I'm just going to pull a word from chat. I want a 5-letter word. How about super? Super is going to be our password. And I'm going to add a hash to the, not a hash. I'm going to add a salt to the end of this. I'm going to stick with letters and numbers. Oops. Just because I'm not positive how special characters are and I don't want a live demo to go bad. So here's my salt. I'm going to append that to the end of my password. And I'm going to calculate a hash. So I have a salted hash. Now the salt is going to be stored in plain text. So any attacker trying to crack this hash is going to have that salt. That information is freely available to them. They can look up the Bcrypt spec and figure out what that stored value means, how to parse the salt and the hash and get these two values that they need. So they're going to have the salt, they're going to have the hash, they're not going to know this password super. I pulled that from chat just now randomly, I didn't set anything up beforehand. So an attacker isn't going to have that. I'm not going to tell my code here that password. I'm just going to tell it the salt, which is stored in plain text. There's ridiculous amounts of entropy here, but stored in plain text. And then the hash itself, which I pasted the same value twice. Let me get the actual salt very carefully to make sure I don't get an extra character in there. I did that yesterday. I did that on Monday too. I don't know what's going on with that. Anyway, that's what an attacker is going to have. The salt and the hash. They're not going to have the actual password. I'm going to run this program. Of course, this is a very weak password. I carefully chose a 5-character string for a little suspense, but not too much. And there it is. I just cracked that hash. The salt didn't add any entropy because we're storing the salt in plain text. So what the attack is every time I want to attempt a hash, I'm going to take the value that I'm guessing, append the salt to the end of it. Let me go into this one. I'm just going to append the salt to the end of it. I know what the salt is, so every time I take a guess, I'm going to append the salt to the end of it and then compute the hash. It doesn't change the way I do my brute force attack. I'm just going to append the salt to every guess that I make. And then hash. And if the hash matches, then I'm in. I cracked that password. So that's all my brute force attack is going to do. Just I'm guessing every input of length 1, every input of length 2, etc. until I crack this thing. I am using only lowercase letters, and I carefully chose a password that only has lowercase letters. If we have a different alphabet here, of course it's going to take longer. Full alphabet, I think this one's all special characters and everything. If I do full alphabet, it's going to take significantly longer. I specifically chose 5 characters of all lowercase because I know the timing is right. It gives you a little bit of suspense, but not so long that we're sitting here waiting. Now we'll just be sitting here waiting for this to finish. It'll take quite a while with a larger alphabet size. Oh, I should have changed the password. Let me actually change it. So like if we did $, capital P, what's a good E? 3, I guess. Oh, no, I need a new hash. So we can still crack this password if we know it has uppercase, lowercase, number, special characters. It's just going to take a lot longer. Those demos actually did take up the whole time. Oh, I talked about the project for a long time. That's why. I was going to say, I didn't think I had 15 minutes of content today. Yeah, I knew I didn't, so it took a long time talking about the project and answering questions in chat. Because we got time to do that today. Any other questions? We can talk about project or whatever. Homework 5. Has anyone started homework 5? I feel like I haven't gotten many questions about it yet. Or is it just easy enough? It's possible it's just easy enough. I think homework 5 is definitely easier than homeworks 3 or 4. And I usually try to do that in my courses. Is I want the last assignment to be a little bit easier. Like I want the difficulty to peak a little bit earlier than the end of the semester. Partly because I know the end of the semester, all your other courses are going to have an increasing difficulty curve. Strictly increasing. So the end of the semester, all your other courses are crushing you. I like my classes to back off a little bit. I'll hit you early. I'll hit you hard in mid-semester, and then I tend to back off a little bit towards the end. For that reason, and partly because, honestly, I'm just exhausted too. If I give a little bit easier assignment, it makes office hours easier. You know, that's just a benefit. That's not the reason why I do that, but it's a nice benefit of it. Do extra points on the homework roll over to the project? I mean, yes. They don't really roll over, but it's all averaged together. This is a percentage-based grading for the course. Like you could have it's possible to have 100 and, oh, is it? No, it's not. 108, I guess, would be the best homework average you can get because homework 1 didn't have a bonus. But it's possible to have 108 homework average. And I'll just use 108 when I do the averaging. Because 331's, yeah, that's kind of exactly what I mean. 331 deadline coming up, and then you'll work on homework 5. Yeah, all of your courses are hitting you hard right now. 331's hard. 331 is a hard class, but they tend to give a pretty generous curve, so you're still able to get through it and get your degree. 331 is hard though. It's a lot of proofs. It's hard in a different way than your other CSE courses. It's hard because it's proofs. It's a lot of proofs. You know what? I was gonna wait for this before closing the YouTube video. Ugh. Yeah, that's gonna take a while. This might not even finish by the time I end the stream. So I'm gonna say bye to YouTube. Take care, everybody.